Ethiopia is an ancient and thought-provoking land. How much do you know about one of the earliest nations to accept Christianity? Ethiopia has a long history. It boasts one of the longest-running continuous civilizations on the planet. Even the origins of humanity have been traced back to Ethiopia. Ethiopian kingdoms date back to the Bible, and mentions of Ethiopian monarchs can be found throughout the historical record. Ethiopians rubbed shoulders with Egyptians, Romans, Ottomans, Portuguese, and a whole host of other nations and empires throughout the centuries. In all of these encounters, Ethiopia has strived to be strong and independent. And on all those occasions, Ethiopian determination, and perhaps a little luck, have made sure these aspirations were achieved. For example, in the early 1500s, when the flames of Ethiopian civilization were nearly extinguished by the armies of a neighboring sultanate, a joint Ethiopian-Portuguese army, led by none other than Vasco da Gama's son, Christopher da Gama, came together just in time to heroically fight off the invaders and ensure Ethiopia's survival. This was just one example of many in which Ethiopians faced a tremendous obstacle, yet were able to overcome it right when all hope seemed lost. The story of Ethiopia is an inspiring one, and this audiobook will take you through the astonishing history of this ancient and thought-provoking land in its entirety. Learn more about Ethiopia's origin and the legendary Queen of Sheba, the Aksumite Empire and the adoption of Christianity, Ethiopia's Solomonic line, from King Solomon to Haile Selassie, the brief intermission of the Zagwe dynasty, Ethiopian emperors and how they ruled, Ethiopia's communist takeover, modern Ethiopia, and more. Here's an excerpt from the audiobook. Ethiopia has a long and exciting history. People have lived there for millions of years. In fact, it is one of the earliest homes of Homo sapiens. However, a fully fledged kingdom didn't appear until around 980 BC. Damot was the first true Ethiopian kingdom, but it paled in comparison to the kingdom of Aksum, which emerged in the 1st century CE. This kingdom was home to trading routes, diverse people groups, and resources that other nations desired. It became so influential that many consider it one of the world's greatest powers at that time. Chapter 1. From Ethiopia's origin to its golden age. The moment that Ethiopia entered recorded history still sparks some arguments among scholars, but one figure that many have long pointed to as the first mentioned Ethiopian monarch is the legendary Queen of Sheba. This is still highly debated, and some even arguing that the Queen of Sheba wasn't Ethiopian, but actually from Yemen or some other nearby region. Nevertheless, there are those who believe that the Queen of Sheba was an Ethiopian monarch, and her story presents us with one of the first recorded renderings of Ethiopian history. Regardless of the deeper discussion at hand, let us dive into the account of the Queen of Sheba. Our source for the comings and goings of the Queen of Sheba is none other than the Holy Bible. Some might scoff at the use of Scripture for establishing the historical record, but biblical writers have been accurate in many other historical instances that have been fully corroborated by both archaeology and other sources from antiquity. At any rate, in the Bible's Book of Kings, we first find mention of the Queen of Sheba. The Book of Kings tells us of how the Queen of Sheba heard mention of the great and powerful ruler of Israel, King Solomon. She was inspired to gather up her court and make the grand trek from the Ethiopian highlands up through Egypt and on to Israel to meet King Solomon himself. This event was also mentioned in passing in the later New Testament, more specifically in the book of Matthew, which spoke of the Queen of the South coming to meet Solomon. The South is generally believed to be in reference to Ethiopia, a great kingdom south of Israel.